Good morning, world. Cece here. Have you ever stayed in a situation longer than you should have? Not because it was making you happy or healthy, but because you were afraid the next thing might be worse. Man, I know I have. I've done it with relationships. I've done it with jobs. And if I'm being real here, the big one, I've probably done it a few times with versions of myself. What's funny is nobody wakes up one morning and says, you know what? Today, I'm going to make a terrible decision and then stay here for another 5 years, or 10 or 20 or more, depending on what your situation is. It just doesn't work that way. At the time, the reasons feel completely valid. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe if I just try harder. We've got so much history. I've already invested so much time. Or my personal favorite, what if I leave this situation and end up in an even worse one? You know, out of the frying pan into the fire. I think that's where a lot of us get stuck. Man, I know I did. Looking back, I spent a lot of time wondering why I stayed so long. And the answer is actually pretty simple. You know, the pain we know feels safer than the pain we don't. At least I know what to expect. The unknown felt a whole lot scarier. My imagination was more than willing to fill in the blanks. You know, what if I fail? What if I'm alone? What if I make a mistake? What if I regret it? What if this is as good as it gets? And before I knew it, I had talked myself into staying exactly where I was. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes staying is the right decision. Not every rough season means it's time to leave. Not every challenge means something is broken. And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we know? How do you know if it's time to stay or work on something? Or if it's time to leave? Because life isn't black and white. That's what I've figured out. There's always two sides to every story. And sometimes the problem is us. Sometimes it isn't. So how do we know? For me, the answer was never out there. It wasn't in the job. It wasn't in the relationship or even in the circumstances. The answer was always in me. I had to be real honest with myself. Was I staying because I believed in it? Or was I staying because I was scared? Was I growing? Or was I hiding? Was I choosing it or settling for it? And trust me, those are not easy questions. In fact, sometimes they're painful. Well, more than sometimes. But I think that's where the answers live. Not out there. She did this, he did that, boss did this, whatever. It's in here. Because eventually I had to stop asking, what if it gets worse, and start asking, what if it gets better? Or maybe even the better question, what if I can handle whatever comes next? And for those who have listened to me over a course of time, it gets better. Because when I look back over my life, that's the real lesson. Not that everything worked out perfectly. It didn't. Did I always make the right decisions? Nope. But somehow, every single time I figured it out. And chances are, you will too. So friends, as always, take care of your mind, and the rest has a better chance of falling into place. Until next time, this is Cece, and this is Cece Talks Live, real talk, real life.